The crowd parted as she walked into the karate dojo, Jamie Morgan drawing little attention with her simple clothes and modest appearance. When the black belts decided to test this new member, they would learn the truth too late. Jamie's calm exterior concealed the most dangerous fighter in the Far East. The Cobra Dojo stood on one of Chicago's busy streets, adorned with a flashy sign. Black and red dragon decals decorated its windows, while trophies from various tournaments were displayed at the entrance. Sensei Rick Thompson was a 45-year-old man with a sturdy build and piercing eyes. The harsh lines of his face and the dragon tattoo on his neck were in perfect harmony with the dojo's aggressive image. Once a state champion, he now ran his own dojo. He took pride in his dojo's reputation, wanting his students to embrace not only fighting techniques, but also a culture of discipline and power. "No room for weakness" was written in large letters on the dojo's wall. This summarized Sensei Rick's philosophy. According to him, the world was ruthless, and only the strong survived. He instilled this logic in his students, pushing them beyond their limits in every training session. That Wednesday evening, Jamie Morgan, a 34-year-old woman of medium height and slender build, stepped through the door of the studio. She wore a gray tracksuit and simple sneakers. Her brown hair was tied in a ponytail, and she wore no makeup. She stood at the dojo's reception, scanning the room. About 20 students were working on the tatami in pairs. Some were practicing basic techniques, while others were sparring. "Can I help you?" asked the young woman at the reception, Amy. With bright blue eyes and a warm smile, she seemed oddly out of place in the harsh atmosphere of the dojo. "Yes, I'd like some information about karate classes," Jamie said in a soft voice. Her voice was calm and melodic, almost as if she were singing. "Sure, you can fill out this form," said Amy, printing a document from her computer. "Have you had any martial arts training before?" "A little. I took a beginner's course a few years ago," said Jamie, her eyes continuing to scan the room. The attentiveness in her gaze contained more than a random look. She seemed to be making an assessment. Amy handed her a form. "You can fill out this form. Information about the program and fees is also written here. The first week's trial lesson is free, then there's a monthly membership system." Jamie thanked her politely and began filling out the form. As she recorded her name, address, and basic information, at the other end of the dojo, Sensei Rick was talking with 3 black belt students, Marcus, Derek, and Steve. All 3 were in their 20s, muscular and confident. Marcus Tanner, 27, was a former college wrestler. This tall, broad-shouldered young man with light brown hair was one of the dojo's most aggressive fighters. While not technically perfect, he crushed his opponents with power and speed. Derek Johnson, 25, had been interested in martial arts since childhood. Of medium height, dark-skinned, and athletic, Derek was technically the dojo's best fighter. His movements were fluid and precise, but his arrogance was equally high. Steve Miller, 23, was the youngest black belt in the dojo. This red-haired, freckle-faced man, though less experienced than the other 2, tried to imitate their attitudes. Together, the 3 formed the Cobra Dojo's elite team and made this clear to other students at every opportunity. "Is someone new coming?" asked Marcus, looking toward Jamie. "Looks like it," Rick answered, his eyes scanning Jamie from head to toe. "But I'm not hopeful. Women like this usually quit after a few weeks. They run away when they see real fighting. Maybe we should do something to welcome her. What do you think, Sensei?" said Derek, exchanging glances with his friends. The sparkle in his eyes revealed his ulterior motive. Rick smiled slightly. "It might be good to show her our dojo's standards. Show her what real karate is. Don't be too harsh, though." Technically, as the 3 men nodded in agreement, Jamie had completed her form and was handing it to Amy at the reception. "You can stay for the first lesson today if you'd like," Amy said with a smile. "Changing rooms are on the right. We have extra GIs you can borrow." "Thank you. I can manage with my own clothes," said Jamie, her eyes still scanning the room. "I'll just take off my shoes." Amy raised her eyebrows slightly. Most new students preferred to wear the traditional karate uniform provided by the dojo. "Sure, whatever you prefer. You can wait until the training ends, then Sensei Rick will introduce you to the group." Jamie nodded and moved to the waiting area. She sat on the wooden bench against the wall, took off her shoes, and remained in her socks. Her eyes watched the students exercising on the tatami. She seemed to be recording every movement, every technique in her mind. The current training session ended about 15 minutes later. As the students bowed and left the tatami, Sensei Rick stood in the middle and clapped his hands. All right, break. We'll start again in 10 minutes. Beginners and intermediate students to the left, advanced and black belts to the right. Jamie left the waiting area and approached the edge of the tatami. She met some students coming out of the changing room, curious gazes wandering over her. She looked different from the other female students with her simple tracksuit and makeup-free face. Most of them stood out with colorful sportswear and made-up faces. You must be the new member, said a voice behind her. When Jamie turned, she saw Marcus, Derek, and Steve approaching her. Black belts gleamed at all three of their waists. Their bodies were masses of muscle. Marcus stood in front, like an alpha male with his confident posture. Yes, I'm starting today, Jamie said calmly. Marcus stepped forward. Welcome. I'm Marcus, this is Derek, and that's Steve. We're Sensei Rick's senior students here. Nice to meet you, said Jamie. Derek examined her, his gaze wandering over Jamie's slender body. Have you ever been involved in martial arts before? A little, said Jamie, without going into detail. Steve grinned. You must be excited. The first day is always the hardest. Sensei told us to help newcomers, said Derek, looking Jamie up and down. But first, maybe we could do a demonstration, see what we know. Jamie silently nodded. The other students in the hall had now stopped working and were watching this interaction. It wasn't unusual for black belts to show special interest when someone new arrived. Often it was an opportunity to intimidate the newcomer or show their superiority. A few simple blocks and kicks, said Steve, pointing to the center of the tatami, just to see your level. Jamie silently followed them. As she stepped onto the tatami, she bowed slightly, the traditional greeting when entering a dojo. Even with this small gesture, she showed she was familiar with martial arts traditions. Her posture was calm and relaxed, her hands hanging loosely at her sides. The black belts surrounded her in a half-moon shape. Now the entire hall was watching them. First, let's show the basic stance, said Marcus, taking a fighting position. This is how you should stand. Jamie didn't mimic the position, she just watched. The expression on her face was calm and unreadable, almost as if she were in meditation. Come on, you should try, said Marcus impatiently. I think I'd like to see how you move first, Jamie said in a soft voice. Marcus winked at his friends. All right then, let's show you. Marcus suddenly lunged forward, throwing a quick but controlled punch. The punch stopped a few inches from Jamie's cheek. The entire movement was fluid and powerful, the result of years of practice. The woman didn't flinch, didn't even blink. See? You have to be fast, said Marcus, withdrawing his fist. Your turn. Jamie still didn't move. She just smiled. A spark flashed in her eyes almost as if she were amused. Good technique. What else? Marcus's expression hardened. The newcomer's calmness had bothered him. Derek stepped forward. Maybe we should do a more interactive demonstration, he said in a threatening tone. Let's show you how to protect yourself from an attack. Jamie nodded. Good idea. I'll attack. You just try to protect yourself, said Derek, taking a position. His stance was aggressive, like a hunter. Sensei Rick was watching from the corner, a slight smile on his face. He thought the new woman was being taught a small lesson. Such demonstrations were a way to reinforce the dojo's hierarchy. The strong at the top, the weak at the bottom. Derek moved forward, trying to grab Jamie's arm. The movement was fast and aggressive, but still controlled, to a degree. Jamie slightly slid to the side, showing no resistance. So much so that Derek almost lost his balance. The movement was so elegant and minimal, it was almost invisible. Not like that, said Derek, slightly irritated. You should block. You should defend yourself, not just escape. I understand, said Jamie, still calmly. An understanding appeared in her eyes, as if she were learning the rules of a game. This time, Derek lunged more determinedly, trying to grab Jamie's wrists. The aim was to immobilize her and make a show of power. Jamie again avoided with a minimal movement, like a shadow. Derek's hands grasped empty space. Derek stumbled, surprise on his face. Defend yourself, said Derek, now clearly irritated. His face had begun to redden. He felt humiliated. The hall was now completely silent. All students were watching this strange interaction. Some were surprised. It was unexpected for the newcomer to remain so calm and avoid Derek's attack so gracefully. Steve stepped forward with a confident smile. Maybe we should do real sparring. Show what a real fight is like. Jamie looked at them, then walked to the center of the tatami. Her movements were fluid and graceful, such that even her simple gray tracksuit now looked different. Okay. Now the entire hall had gone completely quiet. Even Sensei Rick approached with curiosity, arms folded across his chest, eyes narrowed as he watched. The three black belts surrounded Jamie in a half-moon shape. Don't worry, no one will get hurt, said Marcus, grinning. We'll just show you what real karate is like. Jamie tilted her head slightly, her eyes evaluating the three men. All three of you at once? Marcus laughed. No, me first. Then maybe the others. Jamie nodded and waited. Her stance was still normal. She hadn't taken any defensive or offensive position. She looked as if she were waiting on the street, not like a fighter. Take a defensive position, said Marcus. I'm ready, Jamie said simply. Marcus frowned, then shrugged. His expression was that of someone pitying the woman's ignorance. He advanced quickly, throwing a classic karate punch. The movement was powerful and fast, made with the experience of years of practice. Everyone expected Jamie to panic and retreat or attempt an amateur block. But what happened was something no one expected. Jamie moved with incredible speed and grace. She slightly slid past Marcus's arm, simultaneously gripped his wrist, and with minimal effort threw him onto the tatami, using his own momentum. The movement was so fast and fluid, it was almost an optical illusion. Before Marcus could understand what was happening, he had fallen flat on his back. The wind knocked out of him. The hall sank into shocked silence. Everyone's mouth hung open. They were trying to understand what had just happened. Even Sensei Rick blinked in surprise. Derek and Steve stared in amazement. Then both lunged forward in anger. This was no longer a controlled demonstration, but a real attack. The humiliation of senior black belt students before a newcomer was unacceptable. Jamie moved like she was dancing. She lightly blocked Derek's kick, simultaneously evading Steve's punch. Her movements were fluid, elegant, and deadly effective. She gripped Derek's wrist and threw him onto the tatami with a minimal movement. At the same time, she disrupted Steve's balance, introducing the young man to gravity with a light touch. A moment later, both men were lying on the tatami beside Marcus. This entire sequence had taken less than 3 seconds. Jamie still stood in the same place. Her breathing hadn't even quickened. Her calm facial expression hadn't changed, only now there was a different light in her eyes, like a warning. Sensei Rick stepped forward in surprise. What's going on here? Jamie turned to him, displaying real authority for the first time. Her stance had changed. She no longer appeared to be a simple woman, but a warrior. Having set aside all humility, she was showing her true identity. Sensei, I don't want to disrespect your dojo, but it's not appropriate for your students to treat newcomers this way. Rick frowned. His 3 best students were lying on the floor, defeated within seconds by a simple-looking woman. This was impossible. Who are you? Jamie bowed slightly with a traditional gesture of respect. Jamie Morgan. Or perhaps you've heard of me as Shadow Morgan. A gasp was heard in the hall. Several students looked at each other in astonishment. Some began to whisper, Shadow Morgan? Is she real? What is she doing here? Rick's face paled. Shadow Morgan, trained at the 5 temples in the Far East, world champion in 3 different martial arts, and chief of the Japanese Imperial Family's Special Protection Unit, Jamie completed calmly. Marcus, Derek, and Steve were frozen as they tried to get up from the tatami. Jamie Morgan was a legend in the martial arts world. She had started karate at 15, then trained with the most respected masters in China, Japan, and Korea. In her 20s, she became known for defeating opponents within seconds in international tournaments and for rarely being defeated. She had mastered many fighting styles, uniquely combining traditional and modern techniques. She hadn't been seen for the last 5 years, with some saying she had started a private security company, others claiming she had retreated to the mountains in seclusion. but her legend lived on in the martial arts world. Why? Why are you here? Asked Rick, his voice trembling. Now he understood why Jamie had avoided fighting. She wasn't avoiding. She just didn't want to hurt the three black belts. I just moved to the city, said Jamie calmly. I was looking for a dojo, a place where I could train regularly. I heard this place was good. Rick swallowed. He had fully grasped the seriousness of the situation and his own mistake. We're honored. I mean, if you'd like to train with us. Jamie looked around at the three black belt students still sitting on the floor in shock, then at the other students in the hall. There was admiration in some students' eyes, surprise in others. The light in the eyes of the young female students was different. They seemed to have found a source of inspiration. Perhaps you should reconsider your dojo's philosophy first, Sensei, said Jamie, pointing to the "No room for weakness" slogan on the wall. Real karate is not about showing power, but about being able to control it. Not about crushing the seemingly weak, but guiding them. Rick lowered his head in shame. At that moment, he realized how the culture in his dojo had deteriorated, how his philosophy had been distorted. You're right. I apologize. Marcus slowly got up, wincing in pain. We apologize too, Morgan-san. We shouldn't have behaved this way. Derek and Steve also stood up, bowing their heads. It was our mistake, said Derek with genuine regret. Jamie smiled at them. Her smile was warm and sincere, not punishing but forgiving. I accept your apologies, and if you'd like, I can give you a real demonstration. I can show you that karate is not just about power, but also about grace. Everyone in the hall nodded eagerly. Watching Shadow Morgan live was a rare opportunity in the martial arts community. A young male student pulled out his phone. Can I record this? Jamie gently shook her head. The demonstration is only for those present here. Sometimes the most valuable lessons are experienced in the moment, not watched later. The young man lowered his phone in disappointment, but still waited excitedly. Jamie moved to the center of the tatami, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. For a moment, she remained completely still, as if connecting with everything around her. Then she began to perform a kata, with such fast, fluid movements that the viewers held their breath. The kata was a traditional Okinawan form, but Jamie's interpretation was entirely her own. Each movement showed years of discipline, dedication, and mastery. This simple-looking woman in gray sweats had suddenly become the most impressive presence in the hall. Her power, control, and grace reflected the essence of martial arts. When the kata ended, the hall sank into deep silence, followed by enthusiastic applause. The students were in awe of the mastery they had just witnessed. Amazing, whispered Rick. Complete mastery. Jamie bowed slightly. Thank you, Sensei. If you'll accept, I'd like to train regularly at your dojo. It would be an honor for us, said Rick sincerely. Also, perhaps you could teach our students a few things? Show them what real martial arts are about? Jamie smiled. Gladly. But on one condition. Every student will receive the same respect, regardless of their clothes, appearance, or background. Martial arts are not for ego, but for self-improvement. Rick bowed his head. I promise, I will change my dojo's culture. Marcus, Derek, and Steve also bowed in the same way. We have much to learn from you, Morgan-san, said Marcus humbly. Jamie looked at them with a warm smile. And I have much to teach you. First lesson, never judge a book by its cover. That evening, as Jamie was leaving the dojo, Amy met her at the door. Morgan-san, what happened today was incredible. Everyone was very impressed. Jamie smiled. Thank you, Amy. Sometimes people need a lesson. Will you stay here? Amy asked hopefully. I mean, will you come regularly? Yes, I think I'll stay, said Jamie. This dojo has potential, and it needs change. Amy breathed with relief. I'm so glad. I want to learn martial arts too, but she hesitated, averting her eyes. The atmosphere here can be very challenging sometimes, especially for women. Jamie nodded understandingly. I understand. Maybe it will change now. Then she added, I could arrange a special class. Self-defense techniques for women. I'll talk to Sensei Rick. Amy's face lit up. That would be wonderful. As Jamie walked away from the dojo, darkness was beginning to fall. Chicago's nightlights were turning on. The wind was blowing gently. While walking to her apartment, Jamie took out her phone and dialed a number. Sensei Tanaka, said the old wise voice on the phone. Hello, Sensei, said Jamie respectfully. I've settled in the city. I found a dojo. What kind of place is it? Asked Tanaka, Jamie's former master and mentor. It needs change, said Jamie, but I see potential. And you'll bring that change, won't you? There was a smile in the old man's voice. I'll try, Sensei. Good. Remember, Jamie, the greatest victories are not about defeating the opponent, but about changing their heart and mind. I understand, Sensei. Thank you. Jamie hung up the phone and continued walking. The decision to move to Chicago had been right. For 5 years, she had traveled around the world, learning, teaching, and sometimes fighting. Now perhaps it was time to put down roots. And maybe, just maybe, this dojo could become her new home. The next day, Cobra Dojo was filled with a different energy. Jamie's arrival and the revelation of who she was had spread quickly. The hall, normally half full on Thursday evenings, was now packed. Everyone wanted to see Shadow Morgan and learn something from her. Jamie arrived right on time. She was wearing another simple gray tracksuit, but this time, she had put on a white karate keikogi top, the traditional top, but without a belt. As she stepped onto the tatami, she gave the traditional greeting. Sensei Rick greeted her with a deep bow. Morgan-san, thank you for coming. Our dojo's open to you. Thank you, Sensei Rick, said Jamie, bowing with the same respect. Rick turned to the students. Today is a special day. Morgan-san will show us traditional karate techniques. Please watch carefully and learn. Jamie came to the center of the tatami. Karate is not just a martial art, but also a way of life, she said, her voice calm but authoritative. True power comes not from controlling others, but from controlling yourself. For about 2 hours, Jamie demonstrated basic karate techniques. However, this was no ordinary lesson. She explained each movement, telling the philosophy behind each technique. Students were grouped according to their levels, and Jamie spent time with each group, especially with beginner-level students. At the end of the lesson, everyone looked tired but satisfied. Jamie turned to Sensei Rick. Sensei, I'd like to share an idea with you, she said. Of course, Morgan-san. I'd like to organize a special self-defense class for women. Many women can't fully express themselves in mixed classes. Rick looked thoughtful. You might be right. Our female students have always been a minority. He nodded. Monday evenings, the hall is empty. That day can be yours. Jamie smiled. Thank you. As the class dispersed, Marcus, Derek, and Steve approached Jamie. All three had a different expression on their faces. The arrogance from the previous day was gone, replaced by respect. Morgan-san, said Marcus, bowing, we apologize again for yesterday, and thank you for today's lesson. Jamie nodded. Let's leave the past behind. What matters is the now and the future. We have much to learn from you, said Derek. Your techniques, they're incredible. And your philosophy, added Steve. I've never thought about martial arts this way. Jamie smiled. Martial arts are not just about fighting. They're about knowing yourself, learning control, and respecting others. Would you teach us? Asked Marcus sincerely. Could we take private lessons? Sure, said Jamie, but you've already had your first lesson. Never be deceived by appearances. The three men smiled. They would never forget this lesson. Over the weekend, Jamie witnessed the dojo's transformation. Sensei Rick had removed the "No Room for Weakness" slogan from the wall, replacing it with "Strength in Control, Respect in Essence." The interaction among students had become more respectful. Especially Marcus, Derek, and Steve had completely changed their approach to other students. When Monday evening came, Jamie's self-defense class for women attracted great interest. 15 women had participated, including Amy, 3 times the normal number of female students at the dojo. Hello, everyone, said Jamie as the women sat in a circle. The purpose of this class is not just to learn how to defend yourselves, but also to find your strength and confidence. The women nodded with curiosity and hope in their eyes. First, let's get to know each other, said Jamie. I'm Jamie Morgan. I started my martial arts training at 15. At that time, I was being bullied at school and wanted to defend myself. You, asked a young woman in surprise. You were bullied. Jamie smiled. Yes, I was very skinny and shy back then. No one thought I could be a fighter. So, what changed? Asked another woman. I changed, said Jamie simply. Change begins from within. I found a master, Sensei Tanaka. He taught me not just how to fight, but how to believe in myself. The women listened attentively. Now I want to hear your stories, said Jamie. Why are you here? What do you want to learn? One by one, the women shared their stories. Some had come to learn self-defense, some to gain confidence, some just to feel strong. Each story was different, but they all had a common point: the desire for change. Great, said Jamie after listening to all the stories. Now let's start working. First lesson: stance. How you stand determines how you feel and how others see you. For 2 hours, Jamie taught the women basic stances, blocks, and escape techniques. But more importantly, she instilled confidence in them. She paid individual attention to each woman, emphasizing each one's strengths. At the end of the class, the women were tired but energetic. There was a new light in their eyes, the light of belief in themselves. You did a great job, said Jamie. We'll continue next week. And remember, true power is within you. You just need to learn how to unleash it. The women applauded and left the dojo one by one. Amy was the last person to remain. Morgan-san, thank you for tonight, she said. For the first time in my life, I truly felt powerful. Jamie smiled. This is just the beginning, Amy. There's a power in you that you can't see yet. You'll discover it over time. 6 months later, Cobra Dojo had completely changed. Under Jamie Morgan's guidance, the studio had developed not just technically, but philosophically as well. Sensei Rick now taught not just power and success, but respect, discipline, and humility. Marcus, Derek, and Steve had become the dojo's most dedicated teachers, showing patience and understanding, especially to beginning and shy students. The self-defense class for women had been so successful that it was now held twice a week and had more than 30 participants. Amy had become the assistant instructor for this class and had found her own confidence. The dojo's reputation had spread rapidly. Students from other dojos, even people from distant cities, came to take lessons from Shadow Morgan. However, Jamie had always remained humble. She still wore the same simple clothes and maintained the same calm demeanor. One day, as she was leaving the dojo after an evening lesson, Marcus approached her. Morgan-san, I want to tell you something, said the young man. Yes, Marcus. That first day, I'm really sorry for how we treated you. I've learned so much since then. Jamie smiled. We all make mistakes, Marcus. What's important is learning from them. You taught us not just how to fight, but how to be a true warrior, said Marcus sincerely. You taught us that a person's value lies not in their appearance, but in their character. Jamie nodded. You've been a good student, and you'll be a good teacher. Sensei Rick is thinking of leaving the dojo, said Marcus. He wants to retire. He wants me and Derek to take over the dojo. That's great news, said Jamie. You're both ready. But we'll need your guidance, said Marcus. Please continue to stay. We have so much more to learn from you. Jamie smiled. Of course I'll stay. We're just at the beginning of the road. Marcus looked relieved. He bowed and walked away. Jamie took one last look at the dojo. When she had come here 6 months ago, she was just looking for a place to train. Now she had found a community, a family. As she walked through the streets of Chicago, she took out her phone and called Sensei Tanaka. How's it going? Asked the old master. Good, said Jamie. The dojo is changing. People are changing. And you? Are you changing? Jamie thought. Yes, I'm changing too. Maybe I've finally found a home. Very good, said Tanaka. A warrior's journey is not just about defeating other fighters, but also about finding oneself. You're right, Sensei. As always. Jamie hung up the phone and continued walking. As she moved away from the dojo, Jamie Morgan, with her simple clothes, again looked like an ordinary woman. People walking on the street could never guess that this calm, modest woman was one of the world's most dangerous fighters. And perhaps that was the most important lesson. True power lies not in show, but in quiet confidence. A true master doesn't strive to prove themselves. They simply are who they are, simple, plain, and incredibly powerful. Jamie Morgan's life philosophy was simple: never be deceived by appearances, always be respectful, and never forget that true power is power that can be controlled. At the next boxing tournament, Cobra Dojo students won a record number of medals. But the real victory wasn't in the cups or medals, but in the light in the students' eyes, the confidence in their stance, and the respect they showed each other. And this was Jamie Morgan's greatest achievement: creating a community that evaluated people not based on their appearance, but on their inner potential. Did you enjoy the story? If so, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a situation where you judged someone by their appearance and later realized you were wrong? See you in the next video.